As I stand here at the Shirley train station, the rumble of steel on tracks grows louder. The Boston inbound train is approaching, a familiar sight, but one with deep roots. Boston's rail lines are some of the oldest in America. The very first trains ran here in the 1830s, linking New England's bustling port with its industrial heartlands. But by the time of the Civil War, these tracks were more than just a route for passengers. They were lifelines. Troops and supplies moved from Boston to the front lines, weapons, food, and medical aid all channeled through the rails. Union regiments boarded here, young men leaving for battlefields they might never return from. Letters home, stories of courage, and the clatter of musket drills traveled with them. Today, this inbound Boston train carries commuters, students, and travelers, but it rides the same path once taken by soldiers heading to a divided nation. The engine roars. The doors slide open and passengers step off. They're part of a daily rhythm now, but these tracks once carried the pulse of a nation at war. Just a short walk from the train station, I reach a cluster of stone and bronze, three war monuments standing in quiet dignity. They honor those who served in three of America's greatest conflicts, World War II, the Vietnam War, and the Korean War. Each of these wars was different, fought on distant continents for different reasons, but they share a common thread: sacrifice. The World War II monument stands tall, a tribute to the generation that marched across Europe, fought in the Pacific, and saved the world from tyranny. Next, the Vietnam War Memorial, a conflict marked by jungle battles, airstrikes, and a divided home front. This monument remembers those who served, those who returned changed, and those who never came home. And then the Korean War Monument, a memorial to the soldiers who fought on a frozen peninsula, a war often called the Forgotten War, but never forgotten by those who served. Names are etched in stone: fathers, brothers, friends, each one a story, each one a life given in service. As the Boston outbound train pulls away, its path stretches west, a route that leads through the heart of Massachusetts and beyond. These tracks connect the bustling city of Boston to the quiet towns of western Massachusetts, places where rolling hills, old mills, and colonial villages dot the landscape. But this route is more than just a commute. It's a journey across history. During the Civil War, trains carried volunteers from these quiet towns to the front lines. Young men from Springfield, Worcester, and Pittsfield boarded outbound trains like this, leaving family farms and factory jobs behind. For them, this wasn't just a ride, it was the start of a march toward the unknown. Supplies for the Union Army also traveled west, passing through these tracks before heading south to the battlefields. Even in the decades after the war, these rails carried veterans home, some with stories of glory, others with the scars of memory. Today, the Boston outbound train carries students, workers, and travelers, but its iron path still follows the footprints of a nation at war, a journey from the city's harbor to the quiet corners of the state, where history sleeps beneath the trees. Standing before this old caisson wagon, you're looking at more than just a piece of aging wood and rusted iron. You're looking at a design that carried the weight of war for nearly a century, a silent workhorse, moving across battlefields from the deserts of Mexico to the trenches of France. This style of wagon first saw widespread use in the Mexican-American War from 1846 to 1848. Pulled by teams of horses or mules, these caissons carried artillery ammunition, powder, shot, shells to the front lines. Soldiers loaded and unloaded these wagons in the dust of battles like Palo Alto and Buena Vista. They were rugged, with heavy wooden wheels that could grind through mud, sand, or rocky terrain. By the time of the Civil War, caisson wagons were essential. Union and Confederate armies relied on them to supply their big guns, cannon batteries lined up on ridges or behind earthworks. Each caisson carried 2 chests full of ammunition, along with a spare wheel and a small forge for battlefield repairs. They weren't just cargo carriers, they were life and death. When the guns fired and the smoke thickened, it was the caisson drivers who raced forward, risking enemy fire to keep the cannons loaded. At places like Gettysburg, Antietam, and Shiloh, these wagons rattled across fields under fire, their wheels leaving deep ruts in the blood-soaked earth. After the Civil War, caissons remained in service, and Fort Devens, established in 1917 in Massachusetts, became one of their homes. As a training ground for U.S. Army units, Fort Devens used caisson wagons for artillery drills, teaching new recruits how to load, move, and maintain the heavy guns. Even as military technology advanced, these wagons had a role, training young soldiers in the basics of logistics and artillery. Some of the caissons at Fort Devens were likely older models, refurbished and put to work in a new era. And while the First World War brought tanks, trucks, and motorized transport, the humble caissons still rolled on. Caissons were used to carry ammunition, but also to transport the fallen, a tradition that continues today at Arlington National Cemetery, where a caisson drawn by horses carries those who served to their final rest. This caisson wagon may be weathered, its wood faded, and its iron rusted, but its design carries the weight of history, from the deserts of Mexico to the forests of Tennessee, and from the training grounds of Fort Devens to the solemn paths of Arlington. The caisson was more than just a wagon. It was a lifeline, a symbol of sacrifice, and a reminder that the tools of war are not just weapons. They're the means by which men fought, lived, and died. As I walk toward the Shirley Civil War Monument, its granite form rises from the quiet ground, a solemn reminder of a time when the nation was divided. Erected on May 30th, 1891, this monument was designed by Howard and Green of Blue Hill, Maine. But this is more than just a stone pillar. It's a puzzle, a record of sacrifice marked by names and dates that don't quite tell the full story. The primary inscription reads, "Erected by the citizens of Shirley in memory of those brave men who, in response to the nation's call, hazarded their lives to suppress the Great Rebellion, 1861 to 1865. But as I look closer, I see something unusual, a unique approach to names. This monument doesn't just list those who died during the war. One face of the pedestal lists those from Shirley who died in service. Another face is marked "Died since the war," recognizing those who survived but later passed away. And then there's a third list, "Died since monument erected." This means that names were added long after the war ended, in a way that's almost unheard of for Civil War memorials. Most towns built their monuments with a fixed list, a snapshot in time. But here in Shirley, they tried to keep the memory alive, updating it for years. Yet this also means the list is incomplete. A local historian counted 138 men from Shirley who served in the Civil War, but only 58 are named here. Some who fought are missing. Others are honored here long after their battles ended. The men behind the names. These aren't just names on a stone. They were men, farmers, craftsmen, young boys who left home for the front lines. Some served in Massachusetts regiments that marched through the smoke of Gettysburg, while others fought in the tangled forests of the wilderness. One of those listed here might have been a drummer boy who carried the rhythm of the march. Another could have been a cavalryman charging into the fray with saber raised. And there were those who didn't make it home, whose last moments were spent on fields far from Shirley. The monument's lists tell us how they died, in service, after the war, or long after the monument was placed. But what they don't tell us is how they lived, how they loved, or what they hoped for when they stepped onto the train and left for war. The monument's forgotten stories. As I walk around the monument, I can't help but think of the families who stood here on Dedication Day in 1891. Henry Augustus Pevere, a wealthy manufacturer from Lynn who summered in Shirley, was the driving force behind this memorial. He offered to pay half the cost if the town would match his pledge. The town agreed, and together they raised the funds. But Pevere's speech at the dedication was a sign of the times. He praised the Union soldiers, but also offered a note of reconciliation, calling the Confederate dead brave but misguided. Yet he also drew a sharp line, condemning the Confederate commanders for knowing exactly what they were fighting for. His words show the tension of memory, a time when the nation was trying to heal without forgetting. And in this quiet town, that struggle is written in stone, damage and restoration, a monument's journey. But time has not always been kind to this monument. In March 2010, vandals decapitated the statue, a brutal act of disrespect. The town restored it, but even today, traces of that damage remain. It's a scar, a reminder that history is fragile. In June 2021, the monument was rededicated, and once again the town of Shirley gathered to remember. But even during that ceremony, confusion continued. The list of names remained incomplete, a reminder of the difficulty of capturing history in stone. The Shirley Minuteman Memorial here, in the quiet of Shirley, Massachusetts, stands the Minuteman Memorial, a tribute to those who answered the first call to arms in American history.